Hello and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Power Scaling. And we are back once again with a spreadsheet. And today we're going to look at something very special. And that is, we're going to power scale some of the most powerful spaceships in science fiction, or at least from the ones that I've seen. And let's get right to it. Okay, so we've got I've written WMD's attack power. So this power scale is based on attack potency. That is how hard these things can hit with their most powerful attacks. So of course you've got Starkiller Base, which is capable of destroying multiple planets at the same time, and also of draining stars of their energy, appearing in Star Wars Episode 7, being at the top of the list for the Star Wars power scale on that. The Death Star 2, which was incomplete at the time, was larger and presumably more powerful than the Death Star 1. That's why I put it above the Death Star 1 from episodes 6 and 4 respectively. I'm pretty sure most people have seen Star Wars. People who haven't, it's worth a watch. It's definitely considered a classic, especially the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6. I personally do enjoy the prequel trilogy as well, but both have their flaws. Everything has flaws. What am I even talking about? Anyway, from Star Trek, we've got a few down here, and I'll start with the bottom one, this Planet Killer, or the Doomsday machine, or Doomsday device, from the original series episode, the Doomsday Machine. It's got an interesting appearance to it. It's a bit long, shaped like a cornucopia. I guess that's a shape for it. And the outside hull is supposedly made out of a substance called neutronium, which is one of the hardest substances in Star Trek. Even at the time of Voyager, it's considered still pretty tough, and it fires a powerful beam outside of the opening that it has on its front, which is the only opening on it, and that beam destroys planets, and it breaks down the planets into large chunks, which are then I guess devoured by the machine. It's, I suppose, a robotic type of automated machine that powers itself on the bits of destroyed planets. The way that it was defeated in the episode in which it showed up was by causing a large explosion at its aperture. Then I've got the Species 8472 energy focusing ship. I added a note that this works when it has 8 bioships surrounding it. The Species 8472 is a species of alien introduced in Star Trek Voyager. Notably, they were considered a serious threat by the Borg, and their bio-organic technology could not be assimilated by the Borg. And I remember that in one episode, they boarded a Borg ship and just slaughtered all the Borg and put them into a huge pile. So they're very, very tough, very powerful as a species. And this energy focusing ship it looks similar to the standard bioships, but it's slightly larger, and it gets surrounded by 8 bioships that channel power into it. For you Star Wars fans, I guess that's similar to how the Death Star, when it's firing, it has the small beams that channel into the big beam that then fires. It's similar to that, except instead of all being one big spaceship, it's uh, several small ones that come together and they all channel into each other, and then they fire one powerful beam, which is capable of destroying planets and causing those planets to explode. And next, we've got the Krenim weapon ship, which I scaled as more powerful. Now, the reason I scaled the Species 8472 energy focusing ship with the 8 bioships as being more powerful than the Planet Killer or Doomsday Machine is because we are going on attack potency. Because durability-wise, I'm pretty sure the Doomsday Machine would probably still be a bit higher up there with the neutronium hull, which is considered still a very relevant defense at the time of Voyager, even though it's from the original series. The reason I put the energy focusing ship above the Doomsday Machine, is because of the way it destroys planets. The Doomsday Machine, I get the impression that it doesn't it the beam it fires leaves larger chunks, while the Species 8472 energy focusing ship, when that fires, of course, the combined beam, it sort of vaporizes the planet. Not as fast as the Death Star, though, so that's going to be a bit relevant later. Anyway, let's hit the elephant in the room, the Krenim weapon ship, or the Krenim temporal weapon ship from Voyager, specifically the Year of Hell brief story arc that happened, that originally was intended to be an entire season, but that didn't happen. Anyway, the Krenim were an alien culture that appeared in, I think, only 3 episodes. So they're not. If you're not familiar with Star Trek, you might not know about the Krenim. They, of course, had weapons that are based a little bit on time travel, but the spaceships themselves don't actually travel in time. By the way, just to clarify on the qualifications on this list, I am not including individual characters who are powerful enough to destroy planets, because this is about spaceships specifically. I'm also not including specific weapons or materials that can be used as weapons that are powerful enough to destroy planets, but that can be delivered from multiple different types of spaceships, which is why I don't have the red matter on there, also known as Jar Jar Abramsium. No, I'm joking. I'm just giving the new Star Trek a hard time. Anyway, I also don't have a Dakara device or the Dakara super weapon on here, because that's a planet-based weapon and it's not a spaceship, even though that thing is pretty powerful and could be a contender with these in the right circumstances, of course. Anyway, the Krenim weapon ship is capable of a number of different things. It's got a type of shielding that makes it immune to changes in the timeline. So that means that if someone changes the past, it does nothing happens to the spaceship. In addition to that, its main feature is firing a beam that, when it hits something, erases the past of what it hits. And by that I mean it essentially erases it from existence. So what they did in the episode is that they fired it up on the home planet of a culture, and that entire alien race would cease to exist, and not only cease to exist at the moment, but would cease to exist in the past and in the memories of everyone as well, as a consequence of that, making it possibly one of the most overpowered spaceships in in cinematic science fiction, and that's going to be important later. In addition to that, everyone that is on board of a spaceship essentially becomes ageless or timeless in the sense that uh, the spaceship was operating for around 200 years, but everyone on it didn't age. Uh, so that makes it very powerful. It's sad that the Krenim didn't really get too many episodes. I think they would have been interesting to have, not necessarily as villains, just to have around. The Krenim also used a type of torpedo that it's a chronoton torpedo that has that fluctuates for time and uses that to get past shields. So that's pretty powerful. Anyway, Anubis's mothership from Stargate SG-1. It is capable of destroying a planet's surface, and a potential prerequisite for this. I've read it on the wiki. I don't know if there's any confirmation of it in the show itself, but according to the wiki, they say that you need to have a Stargate on the planet, and then it hits the Stargate, and that causes a chain reaction that then destroys the planet's surface. Another way to interpret it is that it just fires on the planet's surface. Now, it is important to note that this only works if it has all of the eyes of a Goa'uld, which are special artifacts. In addition to, of course, the most important one is the Eye of Ra. And that was a major plot point. So it's important to mention that it needs those in order to be able to fire. In addition to that, even without the big firing thing that it does that destroys a planet's surface, it is capable of firing out a directed energy weapon that looks sort of like an arced electricity, and that can hit spaceships and bounce off other spaceships and sort of chain lightning them, to use a cheesy term, but that's essentially what it does, and is capable of destroying multiple Hataks from Stargate at once, which is pretty powerful. Anyway, we've got some more stuff. We've got the Vorlon Planet Killer from Babylon 5, as well as the Death Cloud from Babylon 5. The Death Cloud, of course, being used by the Shadows, who are the rivals of the Vorlons. Now, why did I put the Vorlon Planet Killer above the Death Cloud, you might ask? Well, first, let's give some explanation as to what the Death Cloud is. The Death Cloud is essentially a giant latticed spaceship that isn't. It doesn't have a solid structure. It has more a latticed structure. So technically speaking, you could fly through it. Depending on where you fly through it, you can actually fly through it, and it also has a cloud about it. I think the wiki said that this cloud was created with nanotechnology that conceals it from at least the types of sensors used in Babylon 5. And it approaches toward a planet, and it unfolds, and it surrounds the entire planet. And then, from multiple weapons platforms inside of this framework that now surrounds the planet, it fires needle-like missiles that are, I think, nuclear missiles, somewhere within either the megaton or the gigaton range. I've heard multiple sources on this that disagree, and these missiles bore through the crust of a planet and explode. Therefore, causing explosions on the planet from deep down underneath the crust, which of course causes a lot of seismic activity, and the explosions themselves also do tend to surface as well, making it a very effective way of removing a civilization from a planet. Another thing that should be noted about it is that in one episode of Babylon 5, it seems that it is capable of sucking out thermal energy out of spaceships that are inside of it through a vacuum. I think that's what happened. Either that it was, or it was some sort of telepathic activity. But that's interesting to note. Another thing to note is that it's biotechnology again. Not that that's too relevant, and also the main center of operations in it is intentionally placed in a location that wouldn't be immediately obvious, so that if someone were to attack it, in order to give some misdirection, so that whoever's going inside and attacking it doesn't actually hit the center of operations. Another thing to note is that the Death Cloud was not only used by the Shadows, it was also used by the Drakh later on in Season 5 of Babylon 5, when the Shadows left the galaxy. They left behind some Death Clouds. So there are multiple Death Clouds. Another thing to note, the Vorlon Planet Killer. It is a very large Vorlon spaceship. I think that's the best way to describe it. You can look it up. It has a relatively simple design, I'd say. Very Vorlon, very large, and it presumably fires a beam that destroys a planet. And the reason I put it above the Death Cloud, right here in power scaling, in attack potency, is because its attack is more efficient than the Death Cloud in the sense that it fires a beam instead of having to take the time to surround the planet and then firing on the planet. Although I'm pretty sure that you'd rather be destroyed by Vorlon Planet Killer than a Death Cloud. That sounds absolutely horrifying, the Death Cloud. Anyway, last but not least, I've got the Althea from Heroic Age. Heroic Age isn't probably the most popular or the most well-known thing. It's from Japan. Anyway, I saw this series and I decided to include this. It's the flagship of the Iron Tribe, or the humans in Heroic Age, and it has a big gun that comes out of it that fires a powerful beam that the feat in the show was that it hit Jupiter's moon Io, and Io then a large chunk of it was destroyed, and it then deorbited and smashed into Jupiter, igniting Jupiter's gases, and Jupiter exploded. So that's the feat. Anyway, how do all these compare then? Of course, that's a question that we're all asking, because this is science fiction power scaling, isn't it? Well, we're finally getting to the point then. Let me just scroll down a bit. This is my power scale. If you have a reason to disagree, please do tell me. I would be glad to change it. This isn't set in stone. I can move stuff around right now. Like that. Boom, boom. By the way, look at that. Actual numbers. I've got numbers. Yeah. Everybody loves numbers. Anyway, my power scale is as such. The Death Cloud at the bottom. What the Death Cloud does is that it destroys a planet's surface, but it does it in a very slow manner, which is why I put the Anubis's mothership above it, because Anubis's mothership destroys a planet's surface in a much faster manner. The Althea is above that, and you might be asking, well, is that feat really comparable, blowing a chunk out of Io as opposed to destroying the Earth's surface? And I say yes, it is. And that's why I've got some numbers here. The mass of the Earth is 5.97. By the way, I decided to go to 3 significant digits in order to measure this out. 5.97 times 10 to the 24th kilograms. So anything that can destroy the Earth has an attack potency capable of destroying this much mass, not actually destroying, maybe vaporizing or distributing, smashing is another way to call it. And depending on how you do it, you can come up with different amounts of energy. Now, that being said, this is only assuming that the planet that is being destroyed is the size of the Earth and has a similar composition, because as I have said previously when talking about power scaling via asteroids, there are large variables that cannot be accounted for. So this is only a general thing, and we're not going too specific on it. Anyway, the mass of Io, which is the feat from Heroic Age, I'm not including Jupiter because the way I see it is as a chain reaction, in fact, a situational chain reaction. So I'm not going to say that it's the same thing as destroying Jupiter, because it's not. They hit Io, and Io then deorbited, smashed into Jupiter, which then caused the whole problem. Anyway, Io has a mass of 8.93 times 10 to the 27 kilograms. The mass of the Earth's crust is 2.37 times 10 to the 22nd kilograms. So that's actually within the same order of magnitude, which I find very interesting. But as you can see, the mass of Io is almost 4 times greater than the mass of the Earth's crust, or at least the estimated mass of the Earth's crust. Of course, these numbers are all estimates based on scientific study on gravity and a number of different things. So it's not really possible to fully do this. Anyway, Io, of course, in Heroic Age, was hollowed out to some extent and was used as a home for the Bronze Tribe. So that's another thing to consider. But generally speaking, blowing up a huge mass from Io and deorbiting Io, which in itself is another big feat, is, I'd say, probably greater than destroying a large part of the Earth's crust. Now, that being said, deorbiting a satellite versus vaporizing a satellite, deorbiting a satellite takes less energy than vaporizing a satellite. But that's just bonus information that I found in my studies. Anyway, the Death Cloud is on the bottom because it's not as efficient as Anubis's mothership. Althea has a greater feat than destroying the surface of the Earth. It blew a chunk out of Io and deorbited it. The Doomsday Machine, of course, is capable of destroying planets, and it breaks them down into large chunks. The Energy Focusing Ship is on a vaporizing planet level, although not 100% there. The Death Star 1 destroys a planet much faster than the Species 8472 Energy Focusing Ship, and that's why I put it above. By the way, just one thing to note, I don't consider the Death Star to be a space station. I considered it to be a spaceship. I know some people say, oh no, that's a space station, but it isn't really stationary now, is it? Now, that being said, I'm not saying that all space stations are 100% stationary, because of course you've got maneuvering thrusters and you might be moving around for various reasons. But that being said, if you're interstellar, then if your range of movement is interstellar, I don't think you can call it a space station. That's just my opinion. But probably most people don't call it a space station anyway. I don't know why I'm addressing this. And the Death Star 2 Starkiller base, based on the Star Wars power scale. And then on top we have the Krenim weapon ship, because of its absolutely OP ability to essentially erase things from existence. Which is, whoa, that's powerful. And I've got the Vorlon Planet Killer here on the side. The reason I put it here is because we didn't really see it in action, so we can't really say how powerful it is. However, I put it parallel to all of the other planet level spaceships, ones that are capable of destroying planets, not planet levels. What am I talking about? And below Starkiller Base, of course, the reason being that it obviously can't destroy many different planets at once that are very far apart from each other. Come on, JJ. The sense of scale, of astronomical scale in Star Trek 11 and Star Wars 7 is just off. I'm sorry, it's got to be said. The sense of scale is just off. I don't know, maybe J.J. Abrams got better over time, but his sense of astronomical scale is really questionable to me. Or at least it has been. Anyway, before I go off on too much of a tangent, Starkiller Base, of course, that Althea is probably less powerful than the Vorlon Planet Killer. I'm not sure. You know what? Maybe it's not. You don't need to actually be able to destroy a planet in order to destroy everything that's on a planet. If you fire a powerful enough beam onto a planet's surface, it's going to cause enough disruption, enough seismic activity, enough gas clouds to destroy everything that's on the planet. For example, Anubis's mothership is a great example of that. But anyway, I think that's really all I've got to say on this issue. Now, if you have additional information that you think would be helpful, please do tell me in the comments below or contact me via email. If you think you have your voice to add to this conversation and you would actually like to appear on the show or to help me with getting better resources and increasing the production value, I would be happy to have you join me. And anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will be seeing you all next time on Awiltus over and out.